Michail Antonio has been linked with a move to Saudi Arabia, but perhaps more interestingly for West Ham fans is what this does do is it provokes the hypothetical question. In the event of selling Antonio this summer, would we need to sign a new striker? Do we have to bring someone else in? Or is his replacement already at the club in the form of Divin Mubama? We will discuss that. But before we do, let's deal with the rumour which has been around for the last couple of days now. Jacob Steinberg all over this one. Antonio has been linked to the club in Saudi Arabia managed by Steven Gerrard, but West Ham have had no formal approach. So the club to club there's been no communication. However, it's possible that Antonio's agent slash representative slash camp, whatever that group of people are called these days, Antonio's people have possibly spoke to those in Saudi Arabia regarding a potential move. Antonio's obviously got 1 year left on his contract. He's entering the final 12 months, but West Ham do have a clause in there which we can trigger at any point, which would add a further 12 months to Antonio's deal. 33 years of age now. I wouldn't blame Antonio in the slightest if he wanted to go to Saudi Arabia. What was he, 25 years old when he made it to Premier League? Now, I'm pretty sure he wasn't poor before he got to the Premier League, but in regards to Premier League riches, Antonio's certainly not up there with the rest of them. So if he's decided at 33 years of age he wants to go to Saudi Arabia and cash in big time for the next couple of years, don't blame him whatsoever. It sets him and his family up for life completely. So I'd get why Antonio's interested. I also get why West Ham would be interested. In regards to the transfer fee, I'd be surprised if there is one, and this is what Jacob Steinberg was alluding to, that perhaps they wouldn't offer a fee for Antonio. It would be a case of we'll take him, so you don't have to pay him wages for the next year. Because this is the club that was strongly linked to Jordan Henderson, and the rumours around Henderson was a bit strange. It was sort of suggesting that they couldn't afford to offer Liverpool a fee, or their transfer budget was 15 million, but they could offer Henderson like 400 grand a week or something. So how that works financially over there, I don't know. Truth be told, I've not researched the Saudi Arabia league and influx of cash and why they're bringing all these high profile players over now. I've not done enough research. I don't know enough about it. And truth be told, perhaps naively, when Ronaldo went over, it didn't bother. I just dismissed it. I thought, there's a guy at the end of his career. He's gone over there for one huge payday, cashing in big time on who he is. And do you know something? Again, don't blame him whatsoever. Eye-watering sums of money. Off you go. So it didn't bother me. But this summer, they started bringing over quite a few players like Benzema, Kante and all that. And I thought, okay, this is getting interesting. But I have to confess, the one transfer that made me sit up and take notice of Saudi Arabia this summer is Ruben Neves. Because the rest of them feel like 32-plus-year-olds going over for one last payday, which, again, I understand. But when they went and signed Ruben Neves, someone with his best years ahead of him, paying a healthy sum to get him out of Wolves and offering him a lot of money, you know, Neves has since turned around and said, I'm going for my family. I get it. But that signing was one I thought, okay, this is interesting because this isn't really the same type of profile player that they're signing. So anyway, not done enough research into the Saudi Arabia aspect of things, but they apparently want Antonio. If he wants to go, let him. He all but said in January he wanted to go. He didn't say he did want to leave, but he was certainly flirting with a move, twerking for a couple of clubs to come get him. And I get it again. I also understand that. You know, we brought in Scamacca and benched him. Then we brought in Danny Ings and benched him again for the second time. So I can understand why Antonio thinks, hey, this my time at West Ham's done now. I think he's a great player. If he was here beyond the summer transfer window, I'm happy with that. If he leaves in the summer transfer window, I'm also happy with that. I understand why the club would do either or. My preference would probably be to keep him. And the reason being, because we're not going to get much of a fee, if any fee at all. And I think he's important to the way that David Moyes wants to play. We've seen it last season. Our better performances came with Michail Antonio as striker. When Moyes needed, or it felt like Moyes needed to push that big red button and go back to what he knew best in order to keep West Ham in the Premier League, Antonio was the striker for that. Now going into next season, or this season, are we in this season? Is it still next season, or is it now this season? I feel like it's this season because of the pre-season games. Anyway, for this season, it'd be interesting to see what we do, because now Scamacca's fit again. Will he even be here? I think he will. But I do think Moyes could do with Antonio, even if it's just plan B, having Antonio on the bench, so that big red button, which is, let's just go back to what we know, can be pushed by Moyes if he wants to. I think would be the best thing for David Moyes, to have Antonio here. The best thing for West Ham And it's two different things here. The best thing for Moyes is to keep Antonio. The best thing for West Ham, I think, would possibly be to let Antonio go. Like I said, we won't get much of a transfer fee, but we will save on his wages, which again is nothing. What's he probably on? 60 to 80,000 a week, which is, you know, again, a lot of money. But in regards to sort of first team striker at a Premier League club, it's not that much. So anyway, Antonio being linked to the only skint club in Saudi Arabia. If he goes, I get it. But what this does do is it poses the question then, what would we do? And this is part of the reason I'd keep Antonio. Because if we decide that we need to replace him, then I think keep him. You're not replacing Antonio. We're supposedly pretty skint this summer. The budget is limited. And we're going to have to spend the bulk of it in centre midfield, possibly bringing in 2 players. There's not going to be much left over Lawley. And I think to replace Antonio, if we get 5 million for Antonio, you're not replacing Antonio for 5 million. You're just not doing it. You're going to need at least 20 million probably to bring somebody in. Do we have 15 million that we can throw at that position and bring someone in? I'm not too sure. We've struggled to replace Michail Antonio with a budget of 50 million. To do it with less, half of that, I'm just not confident at all. I think the better thing to do would just be to keep him. That's if we're going to replace him. Now, a large part of this argument depends on what David Moyes wishes to do. We've seen 2 up front in pre-season quite a bit. We've seen it against Perth. We've seen it against Spurs. I still think it's just personnel available, and that's why he's gone with it. You know, the latter stages against Spurs, we reverted back to our 4-2-3-1 with Scamacca up front on his own. But certainly the first half, well, until Scamacca came on, we had Mubama and Ings up front, and against Perth we had Ings and Scamacca up front, or was it Ings and Scamacca? Yeah, it was Ings and Scamacca up front, then we had Mubama and Bowen up front. So we have seen 2 up front a lot in pre-season, but I'm sort of refusing to read too much into that. Like I said, let's wait and see what we do when we've got like some Ben Rama, Cornet, Agerd, Kerr back in the team, Paqueta. Once he's got all the players back, let's see if we're still playing 2 up front. Tell you what though, Danny Ings looks a lot sharper in pre-season than he has done, doesn't he? Now we've got sort of like the transplant Trezeguet up front for West Ham. He's looking quite good. But tell you who else is looking good, and that's Mubama. And West Ham need to make a big decision on him this summer, and it's quite simple. Are we loaning him out, or are we keeping him in and around the first team? That is the question. If we're playing 2 up front, like I said, if we're going to play 2 up front, then we need 4 strikers. We need Mubama, Ings, Antonio and Scamacca. But if we're only going to play 1, which is what I think we'll do, I think there's a strong case that you only need 3 strikers, Scamacca, Ings and then Mubama if Antonio goes. And I hope we give him the chance, I do. Now, this isn't because he's an academy player. I don't think anyone else is ready except Mubama. Mubama is the only player I look at now and think he's good enough now to be in that first team. I've got hopes for plenty of the other ones. I've got hopes for Potts. I think Lang's been impressive so far in pre-season. I've got hopes for Lewis Orford stepping up and making it at West Ham as well. I've got hopes for the likes of Scarles. But in terms of first team next season, no, not yet. Maybe on the bench and get minutes in the Carabao Cup or something. But if we were, let's just say, out of all the youngsters, who do I think could be on the bench when we play Bournemouth? Mubama is the only one I will give you an answer to. He's the only one I feel confident in going on to play tens of appearances for West Ham at this point. I'm hopeful for others, only confident in one, and that's Divin Mubama. He's been excellent in pre-season so far, but it's not just the fact he's scoring goals, it's his movement, it's his physicality. He wrestled Tanganga off the ball yesterday at one point, just barged him off it, threw him off the ball. Something that we see Antonio do, back into defender, shrug him off and come away with the ball. Mubama did that. On another occasion, he won a free kick off the back of it, and I thought, this is good. This is good. When we were defending in the second half, we had Ings and Mubama up front. Whenever we got it and we were going to go clear it, I thought, please aim for Mubama. Out of the 2 of them, he's the one more likely to hold up. He's the one more likely to run the channel. His movement, I was more impressed with his movement against Perth than I was against Spurs. It's not to say he had a bad game against Spurs. I thought he had a good one. But his movement against Perth, there was one instance, I remember it well, and it was just a bit of a hopeful clearance from us. Don't know who it was. Let's just say Creswell. It might not have been, but it's down that side of the pitch. Let's just say Creswell lofted the ball forward. The Perth defender was favourite for it all day long. He had all the time in the world. Mubama was a good 10-15 yards away. And Mubama, you could see Mubama just watching the ball, looking at the defender, watching the ball. He was just weaving his way over. And then just before the ball landed at defender, he made his move, Mubama. Got in front of the defender, in between him and the ball, brought the ball down and laid it off. I thought, wow, okay. That is the reading of the game, the movement, the anticipation, the skill, the pass, everything was just perfect. And I just thought, this kid's got it. Whatever it is, he's got it. I'm excited to see Mubama play. To hear David Moyes' words after the game, I think he said something, go check it out, but something along the lines of, Mubama's different. He gives us something different. His work rate's important. His pressing is important for us today. He allows us to play differently. I like it. That is encouraging. That's encouraging coming from David Moyes. And it's hard to not agree with him at all. It's hard not to get excited from Mubama. Then you add in both his goals. Both times, both headed goals, but different types of headers. The first one against Perth, it's all about the movement. It's all about going off to the back post, getting away from your defenders, comfortable finish. And then the one against Spurs yesterday, quick short corner, Tottenham had switched off completely. Half of our players were switched off. Mubama hadn't. He was on, he was alert, he found the space in between Tottenham defenders, acres of room, headed into back of the net, happy days. Last season, for the under-18s, he looked too good. When you watched him play, he looked too good. For the under-21s, he looked good as well. When he got that rare, brief spell in the first team, he looked fine. He looked capable. And I'm excited for him. And the one advantage, there's not many advantages of being skint. Or, we're not skint, we're going to spend tens of millions. But the one advantage of sort of being restricted with your budget and having to spend it elsewhere is it can force you to look at your academy and say, well, you're going to have to promote from within. If you need players, if you need numbers, you're going to have to go into your academy because you can't afford to bring players in. And I think that's where we might be with Mubama. Like I said, if we sell Antonio, or let Antonio go rather, I'm not sure we can afford to replace him financially. So that's going to force our hand a little bit and say, well, you're just going to have to promote Mubama. You look at Brighton last season, giving Ferguson an opportunity, and he grabbed it with both hands. And I think De Zerbi's managed him quite well in the sense that some games he would play Ferguson for a couple of, he would just take him out and put Welbeck in. He would just take the pressure off him. Say, right, okay, it's fine, you've had your go now. We're going to put the more experienced player back in. Rather than you are a number 9, everything's on your shoulders and that's that. I think Brighton managed him well. It's because they manage all the youngsters well. And Sissko's 18 years old. They're managing him really well. They're not just throwing him in and leaving him. They're managing his game time. So he's getting plenty of game time, but not so much that they're relying on him. And I think we can do similar with Mubama next season, where he gets plenty of minutes, where he does get proper first team minutes. When I say proper, the one thing I sort of take with a pinch of salt is when we play the youngsters in match day 6 of the Conference League group stage game that we've already won. We play youngsters. It's a good occasion. It's a fantastic experience for them. But that's all it is. It's a good occasion and a fantastic experience. It doesn't mean that those kids are then going to stay in the first team and get loads of minutes later on in the season. It's just an opportunity has arisen where there's a game with nothing at stake. Give the young lads a chance, which is the right thing to do. So when I say proper minutes, I want to see Mubama getting minutes in the Premier League. If we're a goal down with 10 minutes to go, use him. Put him on. You might just get something out of him. You might just learn something. Because this kid looks like he's got the talent. But not only that, he looks ready. He was up against experienced centre-backs for Spurs yesterday and he was fine. He was alongside Danny Ings. Danny Ings is, whether you like him or not, is an incredibly experienced and intelligent Premier League striker. Mubama didn't look out of place next to him. I'm excited for Mubama, and what I will say is if we do let Antonio go, and Moyes is going to play with one up front, that's important. I'm okay with not bringing in a replacement for Antonio. I'm okay with promoting Mubama as the man to replace him. Because last season, we had a European campaign, all season, because we won it, but in the first half of the season, we only had Scamacca and Antonio. We managed fine. We managed fine. Were the results good? No, I'm not saying we played good football. I'm not saying we're winning loads of games. I'm talking about availability of personnel. At all points, did we have Scamacca or Antonio available? We did. Scamacca was injured, brought in Danny Ings. The second half of the season, either Antonio or Ings were available for the second half of the season. So we had 3 senior strikers at the club and we were fine. They're all a little bit injury prone in their own ways, but we were fine. Funnily enough, perhaps ironically, Antonio was the fittest. Antonio was the most consistent in terms of injuries. Not something that I thought I'd say 3 years ago, but here he is. He's fine. He stays away from injuries, does Antonio. But, so with that in mind, I know we've got a European campaign this season, but going by last season, there's enough evidence to suggest we'd be okay with Scamacca, Ings and Mubama, and that's it. Bear in mind, we've also got Cornet now, who wasn't fit at all last season, and Moyes has spoken about using him as a striker if required. Bowen's showing he can play there. Now, I don't want to see Bowen play there, but that's our 5th choice. That is option number 5. If we get to that point, you're already in trouble. But option number 5 is Jarrod Bowen. We've got options without replacing Antonio. The last thing I will say about Saudi Arabia is, while I do not know much about them, I think this does present a good opportunity for Premier League clubs to offload the big wagers that you're struggling to get rid of. Maybe not transfer fee wise, obviously Chelsea have utilised it, but I think there's a few questions regarding the ownership of clubs, etc. But you can look at some clubs now, like Man United at the minute are way to sell Tellez to Saudi Arabia, 4 million. That's not a big fee, but what they're doing is they're getting a guy on a decent contract off their books. Just go to Saudi Arabia, it's done now. And there's an opportunity for Premier League clubs now to offload the players that they don't want to Saudi, if you're prepared to sort of dust off the transfer fee. So West Ham, like a few years ago with Felipe Anderson, we just needed rid of him. We had to get him off the books. Masuaku this summer, we just had to get rid of him. It almost doesn't matter if you don't get a transfer fee. Get rid of his wages. Get that contract gone. I'm not sure we're quite that desperate with Nikola Vlasic, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's someone at West Ham ringing up Saudi clubs saying, do you want Nikola Vlasic for 10 million or whatever? You can have him, kind of thing. So there's an opportunity there for Premier League clubs. It'd be interesting to see how far this league goes. I'm intrigued by it, and I will research it. Probably not until September in the international break or something. But massive summer for Mubama. Is he staying in the senior squad, or is he going out on loan? And if he does go on loan, we have to get it right. I think I'd prefer one of the two. That's the thing. If we do keep him in the senior squad and he doesn't play on a Saturday, we can use him in the under-21s during the week if we have to, just to keep his match sharpness up, to get him game time. But with a Europa League campaign and a Premier League one, there's more than enough minutes for Ings, Scamacca, Mubama should Antonio leave. Arguably, there's enough for all 4 of them if Antonio stays as well. But Mubama, I'm very, very excited about. And I think he needs a chance. And if Antonio goes, I hope he gets it. I hope he gets the chance to step up and be sort of... We can rectify it in January. If it's not working, he's not playing well, we can put him out on loan and we can bring in a new striker in January. But for now, I'd like to give Mubama that chance. But anyway, if you enjoyed this rambling, please do drop a like on the video. Subscribe to Hammers Chat. Catch up with you tomorrow.